Hello you lovely people, this is Chris from TechSperts and I'm here with Apple's shiny, sexy and very expensive new iPhone XS, freshly launched here in the UK. I'm going to do a quick side-by-side with the OnePlus 6, one of the best Android smartphones of 2018. And the iPhone XS starts at £999 here in the UK. My eyes are already watering just at the thought of it. Meanwhile, the OnePlus 6 starts from just $4,790. You can buy two of these for the price of one of these and still have change rattling around in your pocket for a nice biryani and a couple of pints. So is the iPhone XS worth that extra cash, or should you save your money and get the OnePlus 6? Here's a full comparison to see which is best for you. And for more on the latest and greatest mobile tech, don't forget to poke that subscribe button. Cheers! Now first of all, stick these two phones side by side and it really is a case of little and large. The iPhone XS isn't exactly a compact handset, it's still 5.8 inches. But next to the OnePlus 6, you'll see the OnePlus phone just towers over it. The OnePlus 6 does boast a considerably bigger screen at 6.28 inches, making it one of the biggest smartphones of the year. And also, as you can see, while the iPhone XS has very skinny bezels, especially down beneath the display, you get slightly chunkier bezels here on the OnePlus 6. It's definitely got more of a heft to it as well, and of course it is a struggle to use one-handed, as you'll really have to stretch to make it up to that notifications bar, though thankfully you can at least just drag it down from anywhere on the display, although that's about all the one-handed help you get. It is quite comfortable to clutch though, thanks to those nice curvy edges. The iPhone XS also very comfortable to clutch and to operate, thanks again to those nice curvy edges. But again, if you've got stubby little fingers and thumbs like me, you'll really struggle to stretch it all the way up for that notifications bar on the control panel and such forth. But again, Apple's got you sorted. You've got a bit of swipey swipe gesture, so you can just minimize the screen and it just helps you reach all the way up to the top. If we flip these phones around, you'll see that they are of course made of glass, full glass construction here on the rear as well as the front, broken up by a nice bit of aluminium banding around the edges. As you see, it is a glossy finish here on the rear, although you can pick up the OnePlus 6 in a matte finish as well if you don't like all this kind of smudgy, greasy print action that you do get from glass smartphones. You can also pick up both phones in a couple of different hues. The iPhone XS, they got a new gold model which is quite attractive. However, we still absolutely love the red version of the OnePlus 6. Go check out my full unboxing of that over in Recombu to see that up close. It is absolutely stunning. The OnePlus 6 and the iPhone XS are both water resistant as well, although the iPhone XS is the only one to have IP certification. It's IP68, so you can submerge it up to sort of a couple of meters for about half an hour, so pretty handy if you want to take it into the swimming pool. Here's the OnePlus 6, you don't get that IP certification, but we've dunked it in the sink and it's been absolutely fine. Just got to make sure you give it a good drying off, and touch wood, it's still alive and kicking. It's also worth noting that the OnePlus 6 is the only smartphone here to use a bit of 3.5mm headphone jack action, so you can connect your wired phones. If you're rocking the iPhone, you'll have to use a lightning jack adapter, unfortunately. Now, as I mentioned before, it's a 5.8 inch screen here on the iPhone XS. It's an OLED panel and it's a 2436 by 1125 pixel resolution, so basically more or less full HD plus. Over here on the OnePlus 6, it's a 6.28 inch AMOLED screen, so again it's OLED technology, and this time it's a 2280 by 1080 pixel resolution, so that basically is full HD plus. And because it's a bigger display, it doesn't pack in quite as many pixels per inch. That does mean that the iPhone XS is technically sharper. However, once you start browsing photos, watching videos on Netflix, things like that, you'll notice the detail levels are pretty solid on either of these smartphones. Certainly the OnePlus seems just as crisp as the smaller iPhone. As you can see here though, despite the fact that they're both OLED panels, you do get very different color reproduction, certainly in the default settings at least. The OnePlus 6 definitely produces more punchy, vivid colors, whereas the iPhone XS tends to rely on more accurate hues. So those vivid scenes do sort of stand out, but certainly the OnePlus gives those colors an extra boost. Which one you prefer? All down to your own personal tastes, of course. If we dive on into the display settings, it's quite basic here on the iPhone. You do get the likes of True Tone and Night Shift, which basically in those low light environments, it'll just filter the blue light for a more easy on the eye experience. You do get night mode also on the OnePlus 6, and also the reading mode, which basically gives you a more monochrome effect if you're just going to be reading an ebook, something like that. However, the OnePlus 6 also allows you to do a bit of screen calibration as well. So for instance, you can chuck it from the default really punchy colours into the sRGB gamut instead if you want more realistic visuals. And it allows you to fully customise everything as well, so you can bump up or down the colour temperature if you like. And of course, you may well have noticed that both of these smartphones rock a bit of notch action up top. On the iPhone XS, you're basically stuck with that notch. In the case of the OnePlus, you can actually hide it from view if you want. Again, just dive into the display settings, you'll find a notch display option. open, and all you need to do is tap that hide the notch area, and boom, it is gone from sight. Just puts a nice black bar across there. But the good thing is you still do get your bit of information either side. What about the software? Well, this is where the two phones really differ, because on the iPhone XS you've obviously got a bit of iOS 12 from Apple. In the case of the OnePlus 6, you've got Android Oreo with a nice bit of Oxygen OS slathered all over the top. It honestly would take me a long time to go through all of the differences between the two bits of software. Basically, iOS is good if you've got a lot of different Apple devices in your home. Instead of use a MacBook, things like that, they all communicate really nicely. You can share documents between them, start work on the iPhone and finish it off on your MacBook, things like that, nice and easy. If you use something like Windows, however, you'll probably find that file transfer, things like that, is a bit of a pain with iOS, so you might be better off with Android. As I said, of course, they all support the usual cloud services such as Google Drive, and of course in both cases you've got a very well stocked app store as well, which just packs everything you could possibly need. And of course you've got the likes of Android Pay over here on the OnePlus and Apple Pay here on the iPhone XS. So pretty much every service that you've got on one phone, you've got a corresponding service that you can at the very least grab off the App Store for the other device. And of course in both cases you've got the Today view here on the iPhone, you've got the shelf here on the OnePlus. That just allows you fast access to your favourite contacts, your favourite apps, websites, whatever you want to do, and of course it's fully customizable in both cases. The only difference I personally think that's worth mentioning is the fact that obviously Android allows greater user customization. So for instance, you can arrange the icons however you want. You can hide them away in the apps tray, which is really good for things that you don't really use very often, whereas you're limited to the likes of folders and stuff here on the iPhone. There's no apps tray. And of course you can't just like stick widgets all over the desktops wherever you want them to. And then there's also security. iOS, of course, very good for the security, the encryption and everything as well. Android is pretty much up there now too. Lots of security updates regularly to help keep your data all nice and safe. As for actually getting into the devices, you're limited to just Face ID using that front-facing camera here on the iPhone XS. There is no fingerprint sensor at all on that lovely shiny chassis. Thankfully it seems to work pretty well as long as you don't hold the phone too close to your face or at a dodgy angle or anything like that. As you can see, it just unlocks, but then you do have to unfortunately swipe up as well, and there's no option to just immediately unlock into your desktops. I understand how some people would like that option because they like to check out their notifications before they actually unlock the device. Personally, I'd like to have had the option to have bypassed that, but of course, as usual with iOS, it's do it Apple's way or don't do it at all. Here on the OnePlus 6, it also uses facial recognition as well, and it's just as good as Face ID. In dark conditions, everything else absolutely perfect. Just quick tap and there you go. As you see, you've got the option of bypassing that lock screen entirely as well. So boom, you just hit the power button and you're straight into your desktops. Great stuff. And if for whatever reason it doesn't recognize your face because you've decided to grow a big bushy beard in the space of about 3 hours, I don't know how that would work, you do have the option of a rear mounted fingerprint sensor as well. So just quick tap at that, boom, you're straight again into your desktop. So it's great to have that extra flexibility. So what's actually running the show on these devices? Well, in the case of the Apple iPhone XS, it is the A12 chipset from Apple's own fair hands, and that's backed by 4 gigs of RAM. So far, a few days of use, it seems absolutely fine. I've seen a couple of funny little stumbles here and there. It has had a bit of a meltdown once or twice as well, but then iOS 12 is quite fresh, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt for now. Hopefully it'll smooth over all those issues. In the case of the OnePlus 6, it is Qualcomm's Snapdragon 845 chipset backed by either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM depending on which model you get, and again, super nippy, absolutely no complaints. Your apps just load up straight away as soon as you tap the little icons, you're not hanging around. Impressive connectivity in both cases as well, so definitely good if you do a lot of video streaming and things like that on the go. Definitely, if you want a smartphone that's going to be able to play the latest games like PUBG, things like that, for a long time, then either of these blowers will do the job. As for the battery tech, there's quite a bit of difference there as well. You get a 2658 milliamp battery here on the Apple iPhone XS, and it generally keeps you going for about a full day. Even with fairly regular use, good bit of camera action, the occasional Skype call, things like that, you'll generally last until bedtime. In the case of the OnePlus 6, it's a larger 3300 milliamp cell, although of course it does have that larger display to power. And I found that generally easily lasts me 24 hours as well, again, even with a quite heavy use throughout the day. Both these phones support a form of fast charge, but only the iPhone XS will support wireless charging, so if that's your bag, you know where to go. As for the storage, both phones have 64 gigs in their base model. If you want more storage, you'll have to pay a little bit extra. In the case of the OnePlus 6, you can pick it up in 128 or 256 gig flavors as well, and you'll generally have to pay about an extra 50 quid if you want to bump up to the next level. Meanwhile, the iPhone XS, it's slightly bigger jumps. You get 256 gigs in the next step up, and then a mighty 512 gigs in the top model. However, you'll have to really pay through the nose if you want that extra storage. So the 256 gig model, 1,149 quid, and if you want the top end model, that's another 200 quid on top of that, 1,350 quid. At which point you've got to start wondering if you can afford to pay the mortgage. And unfortunately, neither of these phones support micro SD memory cards either, so you can't just expand them on a whim. All of which brings us on to the camera tech, and as you can see here, the iPhone and the OnePlus both use a dual lens rear snapper. It is quite different tech, however. Here on the iPhone XS, you get two 12 megapixel lenses. The first is an f1.8 wide angle, and the second is an f2.4 telephoto lens with 2x optical zoom to help get you that little bit closer to your subject. Here on the OnePlus 6, it's a 16 megapixel primary lens backed by a 20 megapixel secondary lens, both f1.7. It's definitely very strong in those low light conditions. You get a bit of OIS on that primary lens, whereas both of the Apple iPhone lenses have OIS built in as well, just to help cut down on any shudders, judders, shakes, things like that, to keep your photos nice and crisp. And there's no telephoto option here on the OnePlus, unfortunately, so you can't get closer with optical zoom. You have to use good old digital zoom. If we dive on into the camera apps, you'll notice there are a few similarities and quite a few differences between them as well. First off, standard auto mode, nice and straightforward. You just take your snaps with the shutter button. As you can see, you've got live photo here on the iPhone XS. That just shoots a brief video snippet with every photo that you take, and that just sort of brings your gallery to life, and it's an extra nice little sort of memory with every photo that you take. You're kind of limited in what control you have though. You can basically just tap to focus and change the brightness levels, and that's pretty much it. Whereas here on the OnePlus, you do have a full pro mode. So if you know what you're doing as far as photography is concerned, then you can fiddle around with the ISO levels, white balance, shutter speed, and you can get a nice bit of histogram action there to show you whether your shot is crap or not. As you can see, you get a selection of other bonus modes in both cases as well. So for instance, you can shoot video in slow motion or time-lapse mode on both of these blowers. And as you can see there, the OnePlus 6 offers slow motion all the way up to 480 frames per second at 720p, whereas in the case of the iPhone XS, it tops off at 240 frames per second at 720p. And when it comes to standard video, both of these blowers can shoot 4K resolution video at up to 60 frames per second. It'll absolutely kill your storage, but it does look super crisp. And I'm definitely impressed by the image stabilization of both the iPhone XS and the OnePlus 6. Even at that 4K level, your results are surprisingly smooth. And of course, because they're both dual lens snappers, you do get a bit of portrait mode action, which just uses both of those lenses to snap on your subject. Just keep them nice and crisp, while also blurring the background. Now, in the case of the iPhone XS, you get, of course, all the sort of funky studio light and style effects, if that's your bag. And as for the front-facing camera, you get a 7 megapixel snapper here on the iPhone XS, and it's a 16 megapixel front-facing camera here on the OnePlus. As you can see, you do get portrait smarts in both cases, even though it's a single lens snapper. It just uses the OnePlus or the Apple software in order to snap onto your subject, and again, just kind of give it a blurred effect. It can be a bit hit and miss in both cases, of course, because it is just a single lens, not dual. And that right there, in a nutshell, is the iPhone XS versus the OnePlus 6. As you can see, quite a lot of differences between them, the primary one being that price point. The OnePlus 6 is much better value for money in our personal opinion, but of course you might think differently. You might think the iPhone is the best thing since sliced bread. Is sliced bread particularly good? I'm not a fan, to be honest. I'm just down on most stuff because I'm a miserable git. But definitely let us know what you think down in the comments below. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. And don't forget, for more comparisons of the latest and greatest mobile tech, to give that subscribe button a damn good pull. Thanks guys, love you!